Barakatah Yahawah, Bahasham, Yahawashi, Bahasham, Rakha Kudash. Welcome to another live lesson. The name of this one is Thou art wiser than Daniel. Hopefully this stream will go through, because you know, I'm on the move, and sometimes when you're driving, the stream sometimes goes in and out a little bit here and there, so hopefully it'll capture what it needs to capture, and hopefully this lesson will be edifying, most of all. Pretty much this lesson is just going back to a controversy years ago that was brought up about the king of Tyrus and Ezekiel, the 28th chapter. Now, we here at Great Millstone, you know, we hold that the king of Tyrus that is being addressed in that particular chapter of Ezekiel 28 is talking about Tyrus from the ancient world. Which, was there a king of Tyrus? Yes, there was a king of Tyrus. Tyrus, well, you had Sidon, you had Tyre, you had different, you know, Hamitic nations back then, you know, and they had kings among themselves. So the king of Tyrus was an actual king, but Ezekiel 28 was not speaking about that, but the king Tyrus. It was a code for Esau today. Now, when you do the research, you know, or should I say, when you read Ezekiel 28, first and foremost, before I mention that, when you read Ezekiel 28 chapter, it speaks about a particular king exalting himself, acting like he's a god, you know, at people like he's a god in so many words, you know, and how eventually he's going to be brought down by the same people he's acting like a god towards. And then it's going to be said, look, when these things happen to you and these nations start bringing you down, I want you to tell them that you're a god, you know, and, you know, and puff at them like you've been puffing at them. Then it also goes on to say that thou art wiser than Daniel. Now, we know that our forefather Daniel was a very wise man. He was made president over the realm of the Chaldeans, Babylonians, so on and so forth. He was given many visions, which he didn't understand back then, even though certain things were broken down to him, and he kind of understood. He understood about Jeremiah's prophecy against Babylon. He understood by books, you know, the number of the years that the Lord said would happen upon Israel being in captivity under the Babylonians for 70 years. You know, so he understood those things. And he wrote many visions that he didn't fully understand himself. Now, the book of Ezekiel, the 28th chapter, was written, according to the history, roughly around the year 588 BC. And the book of the book of Daniel, the 7th chapter, which is a very key chapter pursuant to prophecy, that holds the kingdoms of the world, empires of the world from that time until the kingdom of heaven, to usher in. That's one of the greatest chapters and mysteries, you know, that hold the key to the whole scheme, so to speak, for lack of better words, of the Most High, or the whole plans of the Most High, Yahawah, Bahasham, Yahawashi, of the world. That particular book wasn't written till roughly around 555 AD, which you'll say about, let's say about 30 years after the book of Ezekiel, the 28th chapter, was written. So if that's the case, and the book of Daniel 7 wasn't revealed yet, wasn't written yet, when this was spoken of by the king of Tyrus, or about the king of Tyrus, that he was wiser than Daniel, how can that be speaking about the actual king when there were still things in the book of Daniel that weren't written, that Daniel hadn't written about, and Daniel didn't know the breakdown of those things, neither did anyone else at that time, because just dealing with the book of Daniel, the 2nd chapter, that vision, which was an actual vision, which the king thought was a dream that he had, that vision, the king forgot what the vision was. So the spirit, there had to be a decree set up to destroy all the wise men in Babylon, because no one could tell the king what the dream was and then interpret the dream. But Daniel did. The spirit, worked with Daniel. They fasted, they prayed to the Lord, and the Lord gave him the vision and the breakdown of it, and he broke it down. But there were things in the book of Daniel that hadn't been written when the statement, of thou art wiser than Daniel, pertaining to the king of Tyrus, was written. So how can the king of Tyrus be wiser than Daniel when there were things that Daniel didn't even write about yet, because it wasn't revealed to him yet? And Daniel didn't understand those things back then. So it had to be a different time that it was speaking about. Now, and when you bring it up to date, today here in America, and this modern world has done the research, has done gone through the history, gone through the book of Daniel. They understand that the book of Daniel, they don't understand the whole 2nd chapter, but they understand that the 7th chapter is dealing with the major empires ushering in of Yahawashi's kingdom. That prophecy written about the king of Tyrus didn't apply back then, because the actual king of Tyrus didn't know these things back then. And when this was written in Ezekiel 28, there were still things that were revealed to Daniel that were not written. So how could it have been speaking about the ancient king of Tyrus? It wasn't. It's speaking about now, because these devils have done the research. They've excavated the different places. They've actually found the relics and different inscriptions, and statues and bowls and different things and weapons from that time period. They've actually gone through the historical records, as far as these different empires, and know that the four major beasts, or the 4 beasts that the book of Daniel 7 chapter was speaking about the Greeks. The Assyrio-Babylonian Empire, the Medo-Persian Empire, the Greeks, and the Romans. And then after the Romans, Yahawashi's kingdom would be ushered in. Now we know that the Roman Empire fell 2,000 years ago, but the kingdom of Yahawashi hasn't been established yet. Why is that? Because there had to be another little horn, and pursuant to Revelation 13, that particular beast was wounded to death, but then it came back to life because his deadly wound was healed. And we're in the last leg of the Roman Empire now through America, and this is what's going to usher in the kingdom of heaven. So how can Ezekiel the 28th chapter, when it says thou art wiser than Daniel, apply to the king of Tyrus back then, when the king of Tyrus didn't know any of these things? But Esau today knows that. See? So that was a prophecy pertaining to Esau today, just like you have certain prophecies that speak about Nineveh, or Assyria, or Babylon, or Egypt, or different other nations back then that applies to Esau today. Because remember, the scriptures say that the Lord power will do nothing but he revealeth his secrets unto his servants, the prophets. So that book of Ezekiel 28 was not about the king of Tyrus back then. It was speaking in code, parabolically, of Esau today. And there is not another nation that is as wise as this devil concerning these things. That's why it says thou art wiser than Daniel. Because Daniel back then was a very wise man. This is why Nebuchadnezzar elevated him to the position where he was in. Because there was no one that can break this down. No one among the wise men, all of these different nations, could break it down to the king but Daniel. But then you had the king of Tyrus that was wiser than Daniel back then, right? You see? And this is why, you know, you have people out there that try to be mechanical with the scriptures. The scriptures are not mechanical. The scriptures are spiritual, you know? And being that the scriptures are spiritual, you're not going to be able to get a handle on them mechanically. That's what the scriptures say, that carnal man cannot receive the things of the spirit because they are spiritually discerned. And this is why Esau can't get, you know, the heavy mysteries pertaining to salvation, because everything that he does is mechanical, just like history. You know, why does he know that Daniel the 7th chapter is talking about the Syro-Babylonian Empire, the Medo-Persian Empire, the Greek Empire, and the Roman Empire? Because it's mechanical. It's something that has happened. It's something that's been written about, you know. But the spiritual things of the scriptures, they can't get because it's mechanical. It's the same thing with these Israelites that try to go into the scriptures mechanically, you know, trying to dot every I and cross every T, you know, trying to match number of years in the scriptures precisely or perfectly in order to say, okay, this is how that was fulfilled. But it doesn't work like that, because the Most High is spiritual, and the Most High doesn't want everyone to receive these mysteries. He said, surely the Lord power will do nothing, but he revealeth his secret unto his servants, the prophets. So that's the bottom line. So Ezekiel, the 28th chapter, could not have been talking about the ancient king of Tyrus, because the ancient king of Tyrus was not wiser than Daniel. Daniel was promoted to the head of the kingdom underneath Nebuchadnezzar and them, not the king of Tyrus. Nebuchadnezzar did not go to consult with the king of Tyrus concerning the visions that he had. The ancient king of Tyrus back then did not know of Daniel the 7th chapter, because Daniel the 7th chapter had not been written about when Ezekiel the 28th chapter was written, when it said that thou art wiser than Daniel. And the scriptures say in Daniel itself, the 12th chapter, seal up the words of this book unto the time of the end. Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall be increased. So we're at the point now where these devils today, which are a representation of the king of Tyrus, are wiser than Daniel, because they understand things that Daniel wrote about that Daniel himself didn't understand when he was writing it. You see? So when you piece things together in the spirit, you know, the Lord, as Yahawashi said, him, the Father in him will come and sup with you, then you'll be able to break these things down. But if you're trying to be mechanical, like Esau is mechanical, you're not going to get it, because the scriptures are not mechanical. The scriptures are spiritual. It's a living entity, a living document. That's why Yahawashi said, he that believeth on me, as the scriptures have said, out of his belly shall flow rivers of living water. Why? Because these waters are going to continually run. And that's why the scriptures, you know, and the spirit is there 1 minute and gone the next. You know, 1 minute your thoughts are clear, you can break everything down, and other times you have a hard time breaking it down because the spirit is not there at that moment. You know? But when the spirit is there, everything is concise, it's clean, it's easy to be understood, it's plain. You know, it's not difficult. And when you try to be mechanical and carnal with the scriptures, you're not going to get the benefit of it, because the scriptures are not mechanical. The scriptures are spiritual. And that's the only way to really understand it. That's why it says that the carnal man cannot receive the things of the spirit, because they are spiritually discerned. And in order for you to discern something that's spiritual, you have to be spiritual yourself, or there has to be a spiritual connection to give you the understanding to be spiritual for you to accept it. So Ezekiel the 28th chapter in the 3rd verse, where it says, "Thou art wiser than Daniel," is not speaking about the ancient king of Tyrus. It's speaking about the modern day Tyrus, which is Esau. This is something that's applied to him today, because they know of these mysteries that Daniel wrote about back then that Daniel didn't know about when he was writing. And once again, when Ezekiel the 28th chapter was written, Daniel the 7th chapter was not even thought about till at least 30 years later. So how can that be speaking about the ancient king of Tyrus? The ancient king of Tyrus didn't know about, the Syro-Babylonian Empire being one of the beasts in Daniel 7. He didn't even know about Daniel 7 because Daniel 7 wasn't written. He damn sure didn't know about the Greeks and the Romans, about the rule later on in the history as empires that were represented as those beasts. So how in the hell can that be talking about the ancient king of Tyrus? See? So pretty much I wanted to say that I was at the park. I was about to do a lesson, but it was a few bugs there, and I did put on the lavender, which lavender keeps away the mosquitoes, but it attracts the bees. So it's either one or the other, and then the other drawback is you got to walk around all day smelling like flowers and shit, like lavender. So I just decided to I actually was going to park and do it, but Spirit just had me driving, and kind of speaking on it, just things that we meditate on from time to time. When your mind is constantly running, like into all different type of things, it's sometimes hard to focus. But then when the Spirit allows you to isolate a particular situation and meditate on it, it starts to become more and more clear. So that Ezekiel the 28th chapter, the 3rd verse, "Thou art wiser than Daniel," was not speaking about the ancient king of Tyrus. It was speaking about, it was a code for Esau today, because they are the ones that are wiser than Daniel. All you got to do is go to these different commentaries. When you go to these different commentaries, especially in modern times, a lot of them are Edomites that are calling themselves going into these mysteries. Now, some of them, they get it right as far as history is concerned, and sometimes they get it wrong. Because then, first of all, they're not Israelites, and second of all, they are not prophets, and third of all, they're not inspired by the Lord Yahawah, Bahasham, Yahawashi. So I just wanted to say a few words on that. I pray the Lord that it all went through. It was edifying. That it didn't get cut off, because sometimes you don't know when things cut off. And that's why sometimes you'll watch a live feed of a brother driving, and you'll see it keeps cutting. And you might be speaking on one thing, and all of a sudden it jumps to something else. That's because there was a cut, in the feed. But regardless, whatever got on record, on the video is what the Lord wanted. And I pray that it was edifying, and that you brothers and you few sisters were edified. Till the next time I say shalom. I don't really have a lesson to go into, but if the Spirit hits me, I'll go into a lesson, because I did want to use the headphones, kind of getting used to that, that headset, because it sounds clear, which is a beautiful thing. All right, hey, shalom.